Good afternoon. My name is Karen Cotton. Welcome to the Research and Innovation Training Institute. We certainly thank you for joining us today. Our trainer today is Dr. Carleitta Paige-Anderson. She's a program director with the National Science Foundation. Dr. Paige-Anderson currently serves as lead program director for the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Undergraduate Program, HBCU-UP, in the Division of Human Resource Development at the National Science Foundation. Her academic journey began at Virginia Union University, where she developed a passion for basic science and earned a BS in biology. After obtaining a PhD at Wake Forest University and completing a postdoctoral fellowship at Johns Hopkins University, she returned to VUU. Over the years, she established a research program investigating biochemical signaling mechanisms in disease-causing bacteria and viruses. By leveraging her scientific expertise to integrate research into the academic curriculum, she was selected as a 2013-2014 Senior Fulbright Scholar in Surabaya, Indonesia. At VUU, she also served as the founding director of the Center for Undergraduate Research, Dean of the University College, and Vice President for Student Development Success. Her collective efforts are rooted in enhancing the research and education capacities of HBCUs, a community she is excited to serve in her current role. Dr. Paige-Anderson attributes much of her success to the support of her family and friends, and of course, her colleagues at Prairie View A&M University. Welcome, Dr. Paige-Anderson.
Thank you, Ms. Cotton, for that warm introduction, and thank you all for gathering this afternoon for today's session. I am excited to be here, and I'm really excited to be speaking on behalf of the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Undergraduate Program, or HBCU-UP. So before I get into the program specifically, I always like to kind of situate everyone into the National Science Foundation and not assume that everyone is familiar. Briefly, the National Science Foundation was established in 1950 to promote the progress of science, as well as advance national health, prosperity, welfare, and welfare by supporting research and education in all fields of science and engineering. We're excited because the NSF is the only federal agency whose mission includes support for all fields of fundamental science and research, certainly except the medical sciences. That said, as a person that studied the infectious organisms, I certainly want to underscore how NSF has been very instrumental in funding scientists that are investigating mechanistic studies in that realm. So if you happen to have a background that is similar to mine in terms of biochemistry and biological organisms, I want to encourage you that the NSF can be your home as well, as I did find funding. Furthermore, the NSF ensures that research is fully integrated with education, such that today's work will be also the training grounds for the next generation of scientists. And so I'm always excited to speak with members of the HBCU community because that integration with research and certainly emphasizing the need to train students is something that I know is very robust in the HBCU community. And so the NSF certainly has that at its core. Shown here is the current organizational structure of the National Science Foundation. Certainly we have the director at the helm with a number of offices reporting directly. But what I wanted to highlight is this kind of light pinkish color. These are all of the research directorates across the National Science Foundation. And this one here that has the red box, this is the Education and Human Resources Directorate, where HBCU-UP is located. I offered this slide to let you know that there is such a wide depth and breadth of scientific and engineering pursuits that can be supported by the National Science Foundation. And so given the interdisciplinary background of many of you, Beyond HBCU-UP, there are funding mechanisms all across the agency that either specifically target HBCUs, but are certainly open for all institutions to include HBCUs. And so with that said, I wanted to highlight briefly again, NSF by the numbers. So the National Science Foundation in fiscal year 2021 really just shows the number of proposals. So over 43,000 proposals were submitted, having up to 11,000 or so that were funded. But again, the impact in terms of having over 318,000 people supported by NSF, a $1.5 billion investment in STEM education, it really just informs how NSF is uniquely positioned and how it situates itself to advancing progress across the higher education landscape, but also to ensure fundamental partnerships between public and private institutions or organizations, and certainly the engagement of top tier investigators, some of which I know are at Prairie View, but having here again over 253 NSF Nobel laureates is just an amazing endeavor, and certainly gives me pride, if you will, for working at the National Science Foundation, but also engaging with you. Just generally speaking, I like to let the audience know that there are so many different funding mechanisms across the agency. And so I want to invite you to, once you have these slides, I will share these slides with Ms. Cotton, but these are, they do have embedded links. And so this link here is a link to a listserv for the National Science Foundation in particular, where you can specifically designate the topics that are of interest to you. You can change those topics at any time if you become interested or engaged in work that's beyond your initial decisions. But what this listserv does is it sends to you on a regular basis funding opportunities for that align with your interest, right? And so whether there's Dear Colleague letters, program announcements, or even new solicitations, within 90 days of that target deadline, you'll receive any updated information really in your personally delivered to your email inbox. And so I know the Office of Sponsored Programs Research, that's typically how they find out about different opportunities that might be relevant to the faculty community. But as faculty, we want you to also be able to receive information directly to you, and of course, allow you to have maximum time to be able to respond. But more specifically, I mentioned that HBCU-UP was in the Directorate for Education and Human Resources, but I also wanted to show that our Directorate is really comprised of 4 different divisions, of which the Division of Human Resource Development is where HBCU-UP resides. And then, of course, if your interest is beyond the undergraduate aspect, there are other options of graduate education. I know that Prairie View A&M has a robust graduate program, but also learning opportunities that go beyond what might be in HRD as our division. I wanted you to be aware, but then certainly underscore how even within the division for human resource development, there were a number of programs, again, one of which is HBCU-UP. And so the goal of HBCU-UP, as is indicated on this slide, is to enhance the quality of undergraduate STEM education and research at HBCUs in order to broaden participation in the nation's STEM workforce and STEM graduate programs. As you can see in this figure, HBCUs are largely located in the southeastern portion of the United States. And so they cross a variety of geographical landscapes. And so we offer this certainly, of which, you know, Prairie, this audience is very much aware, but there's such a wide range of institutional context as represented by the HBCU community. And so there are very unique differences among them. And so we believe that our program is uniquely positioned to be able to address the specific needs of this community, but doing so in a way that really allows the community to inform what are its specific needs based on the institution and where you're located. How we do that is we support either development, implementation, and the study of evidence-based and innovative models that prepare specifically undergraduate students for the STEM workforce. So that HBCU-UP, that UP component emphasizes the undergraduate program. And so the funding for our program is really squarely in that domain. In supporting these endeavors, we just kind of listed here in bullet form some of the areas that are typically considered by our PI community, but we don't want to present this as restrictive. Certainly, we again want to encourage the diversity of needs and interests that are among HBCUs, and certainly while curriculum development is a common area, whether it's these critical transitions and examining transition points that may impact retention. So whether that's transitions to the undergraduate program or from community colleges to four-year institutions, we understand that the student experience may vary. And so there are a number of supported projects that investigate those efforts to that end. We also support faculty development, for we know that the undergraduate student experience really doesn't happen, particularly in STEM, without the expertise and the robust professional contributions of faculty. And so we certainly support faculty research specifically, faculty engagement and professional development activities, institutional efforts to build capacity. But we also, it's listed here lastly, but I do want to raise its importance and emphasize here that STEM teacher preparation is also a very critical aspect of how HBCU-UP is uniquely positioned to advance progress and support progress to advance efforts in these areas. And so again, this is just a brief list of what our program has supported in the past. And may help to inform your framing as I discuss the funding mechanisms of the program. So I've highlighted here again that the current solicitation number for HBCU-UP is NSF 20-559. And again, these are clickable links once these slides are distributed to you. But it's also, searchable via any search engine. But that most current solicitation identifies at least 5 or 6 tracks that speak directly to HBCUs, the faculty members therein, and certainly they're listed here. Those that are specifically in this solicitation are Broadening Participation Research in STEM, Research Initiation Awards, Targeted Infusion Projects, Implementation, ACE implementation or achieving competitive excellence, as well as our centers track, which is Broadening Participation Research Centers. Today, I am going to very briefly touch on each of these tracks in a way to really just provide you a landscape of what's available through the HBCU-UP solicitation, and certainly encourage you to consider submitting proposals where your interests may align. What I am not going to discuss today, actually I had the fortune last month of being with this group discussing HBCU Excellence in Research, or EIR. HBCU EIR used to be part of the HBCU-UP program solicitation. It no longer resides within HBCU-UP. It's actually managed by the Office of Integrative Activities. However, I keep it here as part of this discussion because it's very important to make everyone aware, especially in the HBCU community, those funding opportunities that might be appropriate. And so the question that I'd like to ask of you as I engage in this conversation today is for you to consider, how do you seek to advance STEM education and research at Prairie View A&M University? This is a question that we often ask of ourselves, particularly given our goal. And we have responded by identifying 3 areas or 3 ways in which we can do this. It's possible to advance progress via faculty research, advancing efforts in faculty research, bolstering institutional change or building institutional capacity to engage effectively or make necessary transitions as appropriate. But there's also opportunity for HBCUs to have national impact. And so each of the funding tracks that are reflected in the HBCU-UP solicitation can kind of fall under these three broader themes. And so first, if you were to answer that question by saying it's important for you to bolster faculty research capacity, this could be if you're an administrator, those that are on your team. But if you are faculty and you are looking to bolster your own research capacity, we invite you to consider these three different opportunities, again, noting that the Broadening Participation Research in STEM and Research Initiation Awards, these two top ones are directly reflected in the HBCU-UP solicitation. Again, HBCU-EIR is in a different solicitation, but again, another opportunity to specifically hone in and ensuring research capacity or bolstering research capacity for individual faculty. And so briefly, the Broadening Participation Research in STEM projects, these are typically the funding of these awards on an annual basis. We usually typically confer or recommend 6 awards for this particular track. These projects are short-term, up to 3 years, with an award size of up to $350,000. In this case, these particular projects are designed to improve the preparation and success of HBCU undergraduate students for whom those persons are pursuing or have the potential to pursue graduate programs and or careers in STEM. These are typically led by faculty members or in collaboration with faculty members that have a social science background, an education background, but certainly disciplinary expertise in STEM. And these projects are really designed to understand what is necessary to ensure that students who are enrolled at HBCUs are they're investigating and generating knowledge about what that unique institutional environment looks like. And there are typically analyses, inquiries, investigations to understand how certain interventions might be appropriate to increase student success. And typically some of the metrics that might be considered from previous projects is, whether it's retention or whether it's success in a foundational course, those courses that are commonly referred to as gatekeeper courses. It might be through an integration of a teaching philosophy, how broadening participation happens in advancing and generating knowledge to ensure long-term persistence of students in STEM is really the primary thrusts of this particular track. This is distinctly different than the Research Initiation Awards, which are 100% disciplinary driven. And so this is to support faculty members who have research that aligns with all fundamental research interests of the National Science Foundation. So this is a very broad, if you will, area and opportunity for faculty across the STEM disciplines at HBCUs to include the social and behavioral sciences. The National Science Foundation, we are, again, uniquely positioned where we have a full directorate for social, behavioral, and economic sciences. And so certainly HBCU-UP is positioned to support these types of research endeavors for faculty at HBCUs. Typically, we make up to about 22 of these particular awards on an annual basis. Again, they're for 3 years as well. And again, as I mentioned, this is to provide support for the STEM faculty member. In this case, this work can be done at the home institution. It might be in collaboration with an NSF funded center, another research intensive university. It could be another HBCU or not, or at a national laboratory. In this case, it's really addressing the faculty's research interests, and it does have the opportunity to support undergraduate students to engage in these endeavors. The same is true for broadening participation research in STEM. Provided that there's a clear role for undergraduate students to be involved, but certainly it is not required for research initiation awards, because we also understand our target audience for research initiation awards is, as the name indicates, persons who are initiating research. And sometimes training undergraduate students is a significant time investment. And so while students can be supported, we understand that it's totally fine if they are not supported, but you can have support to also travel for faculty members to their collaborative sites. And so the persons for Research Initiation Awards should not, eligibility criteria for all of these tracks are inside of the solicitation, but for RIAs, faculty members who have not had external funding, meaning external to your university within the past 3 years are eligible. So that's a criterion. We're looking for persons that do not have currently have external funding to be eligible for these. And again, it doesn't mean junior faculty. We also understand that there are times in which HBCU faculty are tapped for an administrative role, which may at times take away your availability to engage in research. And so if it's been some time and you want to return back, again, the Research Initiation Award track might be appropriate. I won't spend much time talking about HBCU EIR, but I did want to underscore the difference between the Research Initiation Awards and the EIR Awards. The Excellence in Research Awards, the faculty members at HBCUs who are typically conferred these awards have really already established research programs. If you're differentiating and you're asking yourself which would be appropriate, certainly there's a little more awards that may happen here. It's a little bit longer in terms of how the average time period the award can extend. And there are no budgetary limitations or restrictions with regard to EIR. However, the faculty, again, who submit to the Excellence in Research are typically have experience in engaging and have an active research program at their given HBCU, and what they're offering is a way to build on that effort, whereas there is no requirement, if you will, for any preliminary data as informed in the proposal for Research Initiation Awards. Although if one had preliminary data and they wanted to offer that as part of their proposal justification in the project description, it would certainly be warranted, but for Research Initiation Awards, they are not required. So by and large, we believe, again, that through the Broadening Participation Research in STEM, as well as the Research Initiation Awards, that HBCU-UP is really committed to supporting faculty members and engaging in the type of research that helps to expand the scope of work that are at times pursued in your institution, but also offer opportunities to expose students to this type of research and scholarly endeavors. And so we invite you to consider these few funding opportunities if you are specifically interested in advancing faculty research capacity. Another way to enhance STEM education and research at HBCUs is to really drill down and focus on the quality of STEM education at your institution. So these three funding opportunities that are outlined in the HBCU-UP solicitation are really about institutional change and capacity building. They range, as you can see, from $400,000 for our smaller, targeted infusion projects, to $3 million with our Achieving Competitive Excellence, or ACE projects. I'll start with targeted infusion and just note it that these are, again, typically up to 3 years with an average or with an award maximum of $400,000. And these are, again, short-term projects that are designed to meet some aspect of the undergraduate education at said HBCU. Again, the topics can range from new degree programs to enhancing current curricular to infrastructure. If there's some infrastructural component that will be critical. But in this case, there's a clear goal that's been described and outlined in these particular projects, and really being sure that whatever is being proposed that can be done in a 3-year period is really important for the targeted infusion projects. These are usually at the departmental level, or because every institution is organized differently, it's at the discipline level. So most of the time, targeted infusion projects is, for chemistry, or improving some aspect of learning, if you will, in chemistry, or physics for that matter, or computer science. There are some instances in where there might be an interdisciplinary component. For example, if there's an intersection in the form of data science. There might be an integration, if you will, of biology and computer science, for example. It really is depending upon how the institution makes the case for what's necessary to improve the undergraduate education experience for enrolled students at said university. Next here are implementation awards. So these are, again, institutional awards, in this case, up to 5 years, and they can be conferred or awarded up to 3 times. There's 3 rounds of funding, if you will. And so for the first round of implementation projects, the awards can go up to $1.25 million. For those institutions who are returning for funding up with this track. So maybe they had a current award that is either expired or is said to end within the next year or so. They're eligible for additional funding up to $2.25 million. In this case, the implementation awards, they are more robust and kind of supporting the implementation design or assessment, if you will, of some institutional effort that's specifically designed to increase the number of students and the quality of their preparation. And so again, this is not prescriptive in terms of, what a university might consider necessary for making these improvements at their university. It is wide open in terms of what's proposed, but certainly we want to make sure that every university makes the case for why said aspect is critical and is based on literature. So all of our tracks, to include targeted infusion projects, are based on they're evidence-based and certainly should be informed by the literature, noting any specific gaps that might want to be advanced in some regard, or applying something that has been effective in a different institutional setting to, for example, Prairie View A&M. And then the larger of the institutional awards or institutional change awards is Achieving Competitive Excellence, or ACE Awards. The ACE category is available to institutions that have at least received 2 to 3 rounds of implementation awards. So this is really for universities that have demonstrated success of over a 10-year period of not only managing multi-million-dollar awards from the National Science Foundation, but they also are learning from that said implementation. And so this is an additional funding opportunity for, again, institutions that have had some previous success. And in this case, it's providing support for up to 5 additional years, up to $3 million to HBCUs who have had previous implementation projects to help not only bolster their capacity, so not just every time there's subsequent funding, institutions should not propose to continue activities. These should all be new strategies and new endeavors that are implemented at the institution while building on previous success. And so for the ACE category, what really makes it different is that it asks the HBCU to explain and articulate how this particular award will help transition that institution onto the national landscape, to contribute to the national conversation on best practices in undergraduate STEM education and research. And so these three, if you will, again, there's a range: short term up to 400,000, and then to more long term at 5 years for up to 3 million, but really underscore our commitment to enhancing STEM undergraduate education. And then lastly here is our final track of the HBCU-UP solicitation. And really, if you're considering any endeavor that's going to generate knowledge specifically about the success of HBCUs and how they have been and continue to be uniquely positioned in successfully educating and graduating African American STEM undergraduate students, then perhaps the Broadening Participation Research Centers is of interest to you. Part of the eligibility criterion for institutions to compete for the Broadening Participation Research Centers is to have had at least 3 prior implementation projects. So as you can see from the previous slide, there is an intentional effort to help institutions leverage their knowledge and their understanding about their success and how they are uniquely positioned to add and extend student engagement and persistence in STEM. But through this center now is an opportunity to really enter the national conversation and help to build the intellectual infrastructure, serving as a resource hub to facilitate the creation, integration, and transfer of new knowledge, particularly in the context of broadening participation. So these are all of the funding opportunities that are outlined and available through the current HBCU-UP solicitation, which is again 20-559. I will not list here all of the dates, but we did want to make you aware of this year's funding cycle. We are very much at the beginning, particularly for those faculty research endeavors as well as institutional capacity building. At this time, unfortunately, the Broadening Participation Research Center proposals, the preliminary proposals were due last month. And so if your institution has not yet or did not submit a preliminary proposal, it is not eligible to be considered for the full proposal deadline. But it's something that we certainly wanted to highlight and underscore because the Broadening Participation Research Centers that are currently active, they too are a resource for HBCUs to tap into the resources that are available there, but also may help contribute to the knowledge that is being generated through those centers. And currently we have 3 active research centers in our portfolio. So it's really robust. You can see for the faculty research and institutional capacity building, there are 2 priority deadlines. LOI here stands for letter of intent. So for all of these funding opportunities in faculty research and institutional capacity building, they require a letter of intent. The letter of intent is typically very short, about 1 page or so, and it includes a summary of the proposed work, just generally speaking, what is being pursued under the context of each of these tracks separately. And then also there is a brief statement that speaks to the 2 merit review criteria of the National Science Foundation, which is intellectual merit and broader impacts. And so you'll see the letter of intent date and then the full proposal due date. There's typically on average about 2.5 to 3 months between when the letter of intent is due and when the full proposal is due. So I want to assure you that we recognize that things change sometime. What you might have included in your letter of intent may shift to some extent in the full proposal. Changes are permitted. However, if you do have any questions about the alignment, if you will, of the research or ensuring that you've met the criteria as listed in the solicitation with regard to the different sections of the full proposal, our team certainly invites you to engage with us, and we can help to resolve those questions. And then I'll also say that typically leading up to or very shortly thereafter, the letter of intents are due. The HBCU-UP program does offer technical assistance workshops to the community, where you can hear from us as program officers of specifically what we're looking for each one of these funding opportunities. And so in addition to the solicitation, really engaging with the PAPG, as we call it, but the NSF's Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. The PAPG, it's a very dense document. It's composed of procedural guidance with regard to proposal development, but there's also guidance with regard to award administration for those who receive an award. And so between the solicitation itself and all of the criterion that's present in there that every PI should definitely consume and speak to directly, there's also guidance inside of the PAPG, in which we ask the community to have both documents and make sure that you have fulfilled all aspects included therein to ensure not only compliance of your proposal, meaning that it meets the expectation of the National Science Foundation in terms of having all of the components, but that it also is as competitive as possible. And so then that leads me to kind of the last section, if you will, of this presentation to briefly talk about the merit review process. And so I've discussed at length the announcement, or that's done in the form of a solicitation that's shared with the educational and research community. Those proposals should be submitted directly to the National Science Foundation. Typically, our community has used FastLane, grants.gov, or research.gov. I'll note again on the last slide that the FastLane system will be retiring at the end of this year, and research.gov will be the priority. But once these proposals are received, they will come to the program officer, and it is the responsibility of the program officer to determine how that proposal will be reviewed, whether it's by panel or ad hoc reviewed or some combination therein. That expert community considers the content of those proposals and provides their insights in the form of an individual and panel review. The program officer then considers the content and perspective of these experts, but the program officer also have STEM backgrounds, and so we have the expertise to also fully vet every proposal and consider the context of the review to make recommendations to our divisional leadership. The division director, which is what the DD stands for, may then concur with the recommendation or not. So that's the first decision, if you will, that where conversation takes place. And so this is to underscore that our division directors also have the scientific expertise to really consider the recommendations. And if the decision is made to decline the proposal, the organization will be notified directly. For all award recommendations, there is another step, which is performed by the Division of Grants and Agreements. This particular office considers the recommendation, but what they're doing at this step is really assessing the institutional capacity for award management. And so they have their own series of criteria that they're looking for to be sure that once an award is made, that the institution is well positioned to adequately manage those funds and ultimately ensure successful implementation and completion of the proposed project. And on average, this timing, if you will, on average can be about 7 months after proposal receipt. And so, most of our solicitations are announced 90 days in advance of the award deadline. Here, you have the benefit of having this solicitation available to you well in advance of 90 days, so you can take the time that you need to prepare a successful proposal. But after receipt and going through the merit review process, it's about 7 months to hear from the National Science Foundation with regard to a decision. The merit review criteria, certainly I'll move a little bit fast here just to note that, all of the projects, we're looking for them to be of the highest merit, to really help expand our understanding of some fundamental aspect of science and engineering, but that they also to have an adequate assessment and evaluation component to demonstrate that the proposer understands what success is, but they also have a plan in place to assess success and be able to make modifications along the way. In addition, and more importantly, the merit review criteria are, as I've mentioned before, intellectual merit, which is the extent to which the project advances knowledge, and broader impacts, which is the potential to benefit society or contribute to societal outcomes. These true merit review criteria must be addressed not only in the letter of intent, but also in the project summary, which is a required component of the full proposal, but also in the project description. And we strongly encourage PIs to use headers because reviewers are explicitly looking for how the project advances and meets these true merit review criteria. I won't read these questions to you, but these are questions. These are also inside the solicitation as well. But these are the questions that we ask reviewers to consider in helping to assess the merit of given proposals. And so we offer this to you for you to know what reviewers are looking for and making sure that all aspects of your proposal address these questions and increase the likelihood to which your proposal is identified as having merit and worthy of an award recommendation. Of course, if you choose to engage, what we certainly hope that you do in writing the proposal, we certainly want you to, of course, follow these guidelines, address the merit review criteria. Again, work with your collaborators, making sure that you've engaged enough and you've adequately described the roles and responsibilities of each, and really make sure that your budget is appropriate, that if there are restrictions, you're within those boundaries. And if for any reason you have engaged with this process before and were not successful, don't give up, okay? This is a very iterative process, and we know that success increases with every round of engagement. We just ask that you really, really, really engage and consider the feedback of not only the reviewers, but the feedback of the program officers. Every PI is provided what we call program officer comments. And these are the comments and reflections of the program officer that manage that proposal, and at times typically identifies ways in which the proposal can be improved. A note to just say, submit early, utilize again those the solicitation as well as the PAPG. And then noting that there are certain documents like the biographical sketch and the current and pending documents that do have a specific format. Those forms can be downloaded directly from the NSF site. So just please engage in this process with care, but also note that we are equally committed to making sure that your ideas are fully considered and that we provide you with the insight to be able to develop proposals that are competitive in this process. As I close, we want you to stay informed. So beyond today, HBCU-UP as a program, we do have a very active listserv. It is a listserv for us to disseminate information, not necessarily for you to then engage with other members of that community. But if you're interested in receiving regular updates, again, I mentioned we do technical assistance workshops or just webinars at times. Feel free to use these instructions to subscribe to our listserv. This is different than the updates from the agency that I provided very early on. So that listserv is for you to be aware of the funding opportunities. This listserv is unique to HBCU-UP. This is how our team of program officers inform the community about what's happening with our program. That said, if you have any general questions as a result of the information on the listserv or anything today or in the future, we do have an email alias for the program, which is hbcu_up@nsf.gov, where you can submit your questions. And so I've just listed here, our program did just release what we call a Dear Colleague letter, which is just another way to communicate opportunities for the community to pursue. So there's a hyperlink here for that Dear Colleague letter, but what it does is highlight open proposal submissions, meaning those where there are no deadlines. And so these are all described in the PAPG. These are all different funding opportunities that you right now are eligible to consider funding for. And so if you join that HBCU-UP listserv, you'll find that this Friday, we are hosting a webinar to talk about this open proposal submission as informed of this recent Dear Colleague letter. So we invite you, once you get that logged into that listserv, we'll be sending out reminders throughout the rest of the week. It's this Friday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. If you are interested in other funding opportunities, again, beyond HBCU-UP, we like to highlight those that are target early career faculty, mid-career faculty, as well as additional research experiences for undergraduate students. These of all might be available and of interest to you. These are just a list of some resources that might be helpful. The biggest point here is I want to underscore that FastLane will be discontinued at the end of the year. So please, please, please work with your Office of Sponsored Programs to make sure that you have login credentials for research.gov. Everything is all up to date so that as your proposals are due, you are prepared to leverage that research.gov interface, which is way more user-friendly than FastLane if you haven't interacted with research.gov in some time. And with that, I'll pause and I want to emphasize here that the work of HBCU-UP is certainly too much for me to personally take credit for. There are a team of us who are really dedicated as program officers. Is Jeremy, Leroy, Tori, and we have a program specialist, Tony Edquist, who really helps us acclimate not only reviewers. So if you have an interest, you would hear from Tony, but we also have a program expert that really helps us understand the needs of the community so that we are uniquely positioned to serve you. So with that, I will stop sharing my slides and available to answer any questions that you may have.
There are a couple of questions in the chat box, and I just want to underscore for you the importance of the information that you shared with us today and all of the opportunities for pursuing funding that you outlined for us today. Our researchers here at Prairie View have, over the last several years, the quantity and as well as the quality of our proposals has definitely improved and increased. And it's because of the hard work of our researchers, and it's because we've put in place some opportunities for our researchers to just know more about what opportunities are available for them. And we have sort of revamped our Office of Sponsored Programs, and our Vice President for Research and Innovation created the Office of Research Advancement, and they work very closely with our researchers to help to make sure, to the best of our ability, that the proposals that are submitted are aligned with the funding opportunities. We have a couple of questions here in the chat box. One is, after addressing the reviewers' weakness points in the proposals, we can resubmit the proposal or not. This is for declined proposals. So they're wondering, after they address the reviewers' concerns, can they resubmit?
So the short answer to the question is yes. Yes, PIs are permitted to submit proposals. However, the PI should be aware that it's a new review cycle. So okay. It very well can be new reviewers that have new perspectives. And so it will be a new review cycle. And so it is not a requirement that the PI discloses that it is a returning proposal, because it's not being sent to the same audience. the PI should understand that it is a new set of eyes, if you will, that will be considering that proposal. But yes, we strongly recommend that any PI that has been declined on a previous proposal to make those adjustments, engage with the program officers to make sure that they understand the context of the reviewers' comments, and consider ways in which they might make improvements. But certainly, yes, we would like you and strongly encourage you to submit those ideas to be considered in a separate and updated review cycle.
Right, and just to add clarity to that, when we resubmit, it is not for that same funding cycle, but you're making some edits and resubmitting it. Again, it's for the new funding cycle, the next time it's
yes.
Opened and available.
Yes.
Sorry, can I quickly ask this question?
Sure.
Is it okay for the PI to receive to submit the same topic, to use the same topic for a proposal that has been declined, or he has to change the topic and then based on the question that was asked, is it okay for PI to use the same topic and then change the content to address all the weaknesses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I was sorry, please. I was in a meeting that was organized last week, Thursday and Friday by QEM. I think they're there too. So I asked the same question to one of the program. I mean, I sent the same question to one of the program officers that is it okay to use the same topic for a proposal that has been declined? I think I don't know. Okay. So since you said it's okay, no problem.
So
are you saying topic or title or?
Yeah, the title of the proposal, to use the same title, but address all the weaknesses that was stated in the proposal. I mean, you saw the weaknesses and then you are able to address it. And even maybe you have gotten more data too to support the title. Is it okay to just say, because you said now different set of reviewers will look into the proposal. It makes sense because they may not be aware of the previous one.
Right.
So,
yeah. So this question, in my opinion, it highlights the differences in programs across the agency. I'm speaking on behalf of HBCU-UP.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, here's another question. If a faculty has seed funds from a private company and he plans to submit to RIA solicitation, will such faculty be disqualified?
Any research funding, any funding that advances or contributes to the faculty's capacity to engage in research within 3 years would discredit eligibility. So it's within 3 years. So within 3 years of the submission date. So right now we're going back to anything before 2019. So the final proposal due date, depending upon which track you said RIA, that's typically due in October. So anything prior to October 2019 would not render this person ineligible. It's within that 3-year window. So if you got funding last year, and that funding is specifically to advance your research interests, then that would have a person be disqualified. But if it was funding for students, but it came through you, if it was funding for a workshop that, didn't necessarily advance your research agenda, that would be permitted. For this particular question, I think it's more important for you to email and engage with a program officer to explain how those resources were leveraged. And we always kind of consider the unique circumstance of potential PIs and be able to advise them accordingly. So please don't take that as a blanket statement. It really is on a case-by-case basis, but the clarity in that regard should be external funding for your university that is research support within 3 years or during that 3-year window is an eligibility criterion that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, sorry, Ms. Cotton.
Okay.
I was the one that asked that question.
Okay.
So let me explain the scenario behind it.
Mhm.
Dow gave one of our centers in school, Ruth J. Simmons RITI Center. They gave them the money. Now, they were unable to use the money for what they intend to use it for. And actually, I was the one. So I now reach out to the College of Engineering that I need some funds to get a high performance computer, which will be useful for my students because some students are working with me. And we were doing some simulation, but the computer that we are using couldn't take that simulation now because we need a high performance computer. So eventually I reached out to the college and the college said, oh, there's a provision that is trying to give some money for faculty to help them with students and also their research together somehow. And that I can, so we reach out to Dow. Dow now said that there's a fund that he has already given to the school already, that they are not using it, that Dow authorized that Ruth J. Simmons Center to redirect the fund for us to get the high performance computer. And it's not very much, it's just about 11 to 20 something thousand. Maybe just for one, it's about 11,000. And it's going to be beneficial for me and my students because we are like stranded. So that's why I asked that question. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for us to re-engage kind of one-on-one to talk about that particular example in greater detail. But I can say if the company made the award to the university and you are not the PI, then you did not receive that funding. But again, we can talk about it. It is an external award to advance faculty's research capacity. If you want to discuss that a bit further, we can certainly follow up, but that is the current language as reflected in the solicitation.
Okay, definitely I will reach out to you. Yes.
Very good. And as always, whenever we do the trainings and we have a representative from an external funding source, we always, one of the things we do in our wrap up is encourage you to reach out to our program officers. Reach out to the program officers. They want you to call. They want you to email. Dr. Paige-Anderson has said that every time that she's been here with us, and others have said the same. There is another question. Is it possible to get some of the proposals of those who are already funded?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. The short answer is not likely. So one way that we typically encourage the community to have access to such proposals is in this presentation, I provided a link to what's called the Nsf Awards Database. And so we have a public facing search tool where persons like yourselves can go in and either look up those that are by tracks, as I've listed for HBCU-UP, and you can see previously funded projects. For each one of those awards, you'll see a page where it has the abstracts of each of the proposals, but it also has the name of the PI. There's an opportunity to reach out to that PI and see if they're permitted to share their proposals. That is totally their decision. We are governed to maintain kind of the confidentiality of not only proposals, but also the merit review process. You might find across NSF that through training opportunities, sometimes redacted proposals are used, but that is a very labor-intensive approval process for that to happen. And so at present, HBCU-UP does not have any proposals that we can distribute in this way. But if we find in the community that that is a significant area of need, that's something that we can consider going forward.
Okay. And lastly, is it possible, could the PowerPoint be available later?
Yes. So as soon as we have finished out today, I will share the slides to be disseminated.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, today's session is being recorded. So if you want to forward the session to someone, or if you want to review some of the information that was shared at a later time, it will be available on our YouTube channel, which is PVAMU Research and Innovation. And I put a link in the chat box, so you can scroll down and you can see that link. And If there are no more questions, it is after time, actually. Thank you all for the engagement and for asking the great questions. Thank you, Dr. Paige-Anderson, as always, for sharing the information. We certainly do appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.